Dude, I'm a big belly boy too, man.
Yeah, no, fuck you, man. You're not though. Like bro, like I don't know how to put it, but it's like dude, it's so fucking depressing because like this is the fattest I've been in 8 years since I was 16, and I initially lost all the fucking weight.
How big were you then? Tell that story.
I peaked at 320 pounds. So
which is still 60 pounds, probably more like 80 pounds of fat. More than you are now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a lot, right? So yeah, when I was so growing up, like I don't want to fucking put my parents on blast, but like my parents were the kind of my mom's the kind of person where, you know, you'd be eating your pierogies and you'd be like, "Oh, mom, I'm full. I don't want this," or whatever. And then immediately, like, bam, before you can even say a goddamn word, she's letting you know about the kids in Africa that don't have food, right? It's like before you can get a word out, you're being lectured on that. And then not only that, but it was like a situation where it's like, you can't leave the table until your food is done. Bro, there's this one time, I tell this story every time this gets brought up. My parents had friends over, right? But the friends got there like while we were eating dinner. My brothers and I were eating dinner, right? So they made some weird like stir fry or something like that. Like it wasn't driving with you. Like, I wasn't feeling it.
Stir fry.
Yeah, bro. Like I don't know how to put it. I can hardly remember. I just remember the events afterwards. Okay. Right? Everything beforehand is a fucking blur. I just remember that I was forced to sit at this table, and so then my parents are in the front room entertaining. The fake bullshit. Like, oh my god, how are you?
I'm so interested in your kid that I don't care about.
Yeah. Yeah. So my parents are in the front room entertaining, and the way my house works is here's the front door, right? Here's the front door, and then you walk back, and then there's the back of the kitchen. That's terrible depth and explanation, but anyway, you can see the back door from the front door essentially, right? It's one long corridor, and then there's two stairs going up, stairs going down, blah blah blah. And then so I was sitting at this. Sorry,
and
what
then
was
a
that?
kitchen. So it's like for people listening. By the way, I am a little bit high right now, but for people listening, It's like a big main hallway, stairs up, stairs down. Like living room to the left, dining room to the right, and then kitchen in the back, and then backyard?
No, so you walk up the front steps, and you walk up the front steps, and then there's the living room. It's a big room, and then you walk forward like 10 paces, and then there's a staircase going up, and then right beside it to the right, there's a staircase going down, and then if you keep going forward, like past both staircases, you get into the kitchen, and the kitchen's nice and big as well, and it leads to the backyard. So my parents' friends were in the front room just kicking it, right? They're just doing all their bullshit, and I was sitting at the table, and I had told my mom like 4 times. I was like, "Mom, I can't finish this. Like, Mom, I feel sick. I'm not going to eat this." And she's like, "No, you're sitting at the table until." Then I was like, "Mom, I can't eat it." And the next thing I know, I'm in Africa right in my face, and then so
my mom pulled that shit on me too. She would say that fucking shit, man.
It's brutal, man, because number one, you're like 8 years old, and you're like, man, I don't even know what Africa is. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then like the next thing you're being told is that you gotta, that there's like, it's like, I'm sorry that those kids don't have food, but man, I don't want to fucking eat this right now. It's also
just like so horrible to teach your kids off the bat, like
yeah. 100%.
There's a lot more going on in Africa than like just like the poor
just
part of
starving
Zimbabwe.
children.
Like, what?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. Imagine never learning about it, and you're like 45 years old, businessman, and you're like, yeah, we're going on a trip to Africa. Like,
whoa,
we're going to feed people. My mom warned me about this place, bro.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like that's so like 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Because like our parents would say stuff like that, and like you would never say that anymore, man. Like you would not.
It's boomer shit.
I would never say that to anyone, especially having now been to Africa. Like,
like, you'd say like,
it's such
hey,
a
man,
generic, weird, like just say like, there are people that don't have this food, right? But they wouldn't say that. They would just go straight.
Or at least like make it interesting, right? And it's like, that there's people in the Eastern Bloc of Germany after the fall of, it's like during the Cold War.
Lesson in there.
As a result of communism, they had to wait in line for 7 hours to have a piece of bread. You don't want to eat these fucking pierogies? Are you serious? At least make it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like add a little spice to it, change it up. But anyway, yeah, long story short, I guess I was sitting there and I had told her like 7 times. I was like, "Mom, I'm queasy as fuck. Like I'm not making it through this meal." Yeah. And she's like, "You're gonna make it through this meal. Otherwise, you're not. Whatever. Here's the thing you want to do to spend your free time on your weekend, and this is why you're not going to do it unless you capitulate." Right? The whole parenting trick there.
Is she's doing that for food?
Oh yeah.
Ooh,
oh yeah.
Ouch.
100%.
That's bad.
But oh, dude, I used to so I got so many different tangents to take here, but I'm going to finish this one initial one. So I was this was like the origination of how I got so goddamn fat. But anyway, I was sitting there and I told her multiple times, like, honestly, fair warning. It's like, if I was firing warning shots, dude, like I emptied a whole magazine.
Okay.
And then they were all just sitting in the front room and they're all like, they all started laughing and it was all jubilant and oh my God, and so fun. And I just fucking threw up all over the table, spilling off the edges onto the floor, like all over myself. Like there was like chunks of chicken and fucking noodles and half digested sauce. Like it was just a mess. And like my mom came into the kitchen and I was like laying there in a pile of my own filth with this like defeated look on my face, right? Like I look like a kicked puppy or something.
Meanwhile, 3 pierogies left on your plate and your mom's like, get up there, son. You're not done.
Some CT Fletcher shit. So like, still your motherfucking meal.
Motherfucking pierogi.
So there was just this big pile of filth and then she had to come clean it up. And honestly, that was one of those days where it's like, I don't know, man, it's like I'm a kid and I'm getting in shit for this, but it's like, motherfucker, I told you like 9 times I wasn't finishing that stir fry, right? But yeah, just as a brief example to highlight the sadism that was thrust upon me as a kid.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
I've never heard of like. Well, when I was in the army, actually, they made us one time they come in, and they were just worried the boys were dehydrated, but couldn't communicate that in a polite way. So they just were like, everyone get out your liter canteen, bring it forward, chug your liter canteen. You have 1 minute. And then they made us like all turn our bottles upside down. But my buddy had just gone and drank a liter canteen and then just gone and refilled it up right before they walk in and are like, everyone get by your beds. And so he finishes this second one and then he's like, I don't feel so good because he's got 2 liters of water in his stomach. And then, of course, just threw up all the water.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. That's the kind of dumb shit that would only happen in the military. Because you try to speak up and they'd fucking like backhand you, right?
Exactly. Man.
Like for some reason they wouldn't believe you that you just told them that I just drank a liter of water. You know what I mean?
They shut up. You're stupid. You can drink another. Right? We've decided this is happening.
Yeah. They're like just arbiters of your life.
But anyways,
I completely lost where we were.
Yeah, we were talking about.
That was an 8-minute tangent. It took us 8 minutes to get there.
Yeah, but we were talking about how you got up to 360 pounds.
It wasn't 360. It was 330.
And you said you're pretty far from that now, but like.
Yeah, I'm like
bigger than you've been in a while, right?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I'm 45 pounds heavier than what I was walking around at 2 years ago, right? Like 2 years ago, like I mean, you remember when like back in right before the pandemic hit, I was getting decently, like all the pictures on my Instagram that I posted of my body are all those from that era. I haven't posted anything since because I'm just a grotesque monstrosity.
Dude,
oh, and just for the record, I'm not saying all fat people are like that. I'm just talking about how I feel about myself. So it's just an internal hatred. But no, man, since I was a kid, like it's weird because like I didn't actually start getting real fat until I was probably 10, 11 years old. So once I got into grade 5, grade 6, and coincidentally, that's also the time I started playing a lot of World of Warcraft. But, those things do coincide. But all throughout my childhood still, like I was playing street hockey, going on like BMX trips with my brothers, going to the skate park. Like, we'd make shitty little ramps out of plywood in our front yard and we'd be blasting some 41 of our garage and we'd be fucking just hitting these ramps. They'd break. Someone would fall, fucking lose a tooth on the pavement. It was, running in the house. Like that was my childhood, right? Like lots of shit like that. But then, man, coinciding with like my, I guess, fucked up relationship that my mom had with food and finishing it. Like it's like I don't get it, right? Because it's like a scarcity mindset where it's not necessary, right? And it's like, I understand because like my mom went through hard periods in her life. Like she was a single mom by the time she was 18 with my oldest brother, and then she met my dad, and then they obviously had more of a stable relationship. And then things occurred, my parents' marriage at points where my dad buggered off for a little while and then came back. And so it's like, there's been like ups and downs and periods of like instability and uncertainty. And I suppose her, you know, her like there's a reasonable explanation, right? It's like in her mind, she thinks like, oh, I've been in situations where I couldn't afford food and I had to take you to the food bank. And now that there's plenty, you're going to eat plenty, right? It's like feast or famine, right?
That's a good
so
point.
Like, I get it. And I understand, but that obviously combined with lack of nutritional education and lack of enforced exercise and lack of a balanced diet as a kid, access to a lot of snacks, soda pops and all that stuff, like led to me ballooning up. Like I remember all throughout, I remember when I was in like grade 5, I went on a swimming trip with my classroom and there was this girl I had a crush on. And it was like Kristen or Kirsten or something like that. And I remember after we went swimming, I wore a shirt swimming. That night, I was talking to her on MSN Messenger, and I was like, "Kristen, I really like you, and I'd love to date you, but I have a secret." She's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "I'm fat." And she was like, "I know, I can see it through the shirt."
Oh, dude, that's such a little kid thing to do. Yeah. Oh my God, wears a t-shirt swimming, so it's glued to you, and then you're like, I don't know if you could tell, but I don't actually have a 6'5" under this shirt.
Yeah, right.
Hey, this is really deep for me. I'm a bit chubby. I've got an extra
pretty
tire.
Much how, bro, like I was sitting there like in front of my computer like typing, I was like, so, it's time to come clean, you know?
I can't hide this forever. She's going to see me shirtless one day.
It's my darkest secret. But yeah, no, so then obviously, that happened. But then through junior high, it was like, see, this is probably the worst thing that could happen to me is like, through junior high, I met some of my best friends that are still my best friends today, but they were also fat boys. Mm-hmm. So then we would just be fat together and play Halo 3 and Call of Duty all the time, right? So it's,
that actually sounds sick,
it's like, well, it was, right? It's like, the thing is, it's like, you know how, like, let's put it like this. I was fat, but I wasn't like a fat loser. So like I had one part of the equation, but I didn't have the second part that makes it like unbearable, right? Even into high school, I was a fat kid, but like, I was like the kind of guy that wore gym shorts to school every day because they're the only things that fit me. But I still had a shit ton of friends because like I had somehow, right? But so, like I feel for the people out there who oftentimes, but I know like that's the shitty thing about obesity, man, is like, you don't really have a fucking choice if you're a kid. You know what I mean? Like by the time you're 16, if you're just like super fucking fat, by the time you're 15, it's like, that's really not your fault.
I know.
Like if your parents are buying you Doritos and, Mountain Dew and all this and that, and they're never tossing a pear your way or a bowl of strawberries.
We're not educating you about healthy eading and why it has value.
Yeah, man. Like you don't really, and like that was my situation, right? It's like you kind of wake up one day once you're in adolescence and you're more self-aware and you're like, oh God, like no girls want to kiss me. Yeah. I can't run in gym class and I don't fit into any nice clothes. And you kind of realize like it sucks. It's a heavy weight because you realize that you're separate from everybody else in a degree, right? Because like in gym class, I might have friends, right? Like I might have like, a bunch of friends in gym class and a bunch of friends in my normal class, but then we go into gym class and all of a sudden I'm the butt of the joke because we're playing soccer and I have to play goal because I can't fucking chase the ball. You know what I mean? This isn't like a small violin story because, as you get older, you need to take responsibility for the fact that you're super obese. But as a kid, it's definitely sad because you don't really have much of a choice in that matter. But yeah, that basically
pretty much a form of abuse, honestly.
In a way, right? Well, negligence.
For sure.
I wouldn't say abuse, but I'd say negligence, right? Yeah. So, like, yeah. I mean, like, through junior high, like, shit like this would occur almost every single week. Like, Friday night would come along, and I'd go to the grocery store with my dad. We'd be going to pick up groceries to make dinner, and then, he'd let me pick out a case of pop and a bag or two of chips. And then over the course of the weekend, I'd literally just be sedentary, playing WoW in my room for 10 hours a day, pounding back Dr. Pepper and eating salt and vinegar chips. And then, I do it again next week. And it, like, when you look at it, man, like 100, like that is like, you're consuming like on top of all the other food you eat, just that alone, that's an extra like days worth of eating every single week. Right.
Or more.
That's
or
insane.
More, man. Like a pack of Lay's chips is like 2,000 calories.
1,000. It's like 1,000. And then a case of pop's probably 2,000 plus. Right. So
For sure. And but for a good question too, though, is what was your parents' diets like? Was it similar? Was this what they were eating for the most part, or at least
See, it goes deeper than that because like my parents, like, I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. If anybody who knows me who's listened to this podcast, this is stuff I've said before. Like my parents were kind of like, yeah, they're kind of absent, right? Like, cause like they were here, but not here, right? Cause they had so much of their own shit to deal with. It was like, they'd buy us the food we want, kept a roof over our head. But aside from that, it was like, I never really had like that structure, right? Yeah. That's why like by the time I was like 13 years old, I kind of emotionally emancipated myself from my parents. That's why I have a problem with authority, right? I have this like, fuck you, you won't do it, you do what, I won't do what you tell me. And it started with my parents realizing like, I had this epiphany, man. I was like 12 or 13. And I remember one day, like I asked my parents a question or they were fighting about something silly and neither of them had the answer. And I kind of looked at them and my little child brain, I was like, you motherfuckers have no clue what you're doing. You know what I mean? It was like this like full bodied realization that they're just pretending and doing the best they can. Yeah. And that's stuck with me, right? Because well, I guess the way you could say it is you realize that your parents aren't superheroes, right? Like, oh, they're just flawed ass human beings like everybody else, but they're just a little bit older, right? They've just been through a little bit more. And yeah, but my parents' diet, like I pretty much ate what my parents ate. And what my parents ate or eat even to this day is like when they cook, for example, when I make chicken breast, I'll put in a tablespoon of olive oil. My dad will make chicken breast, he'll coat the whole bottom of the pan in olive oil, right? Just fry the shit out of it, right? If I'm making, you know, a pasta with a white sauce, I'm going to measure out all the cream and the Parmesan and all that I use. So I have a general idea of the calories. My dad's just like, you know what I'm saying? It's like everything in decadence, right? Everything in abundance, because it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like that's how you make food taste good, right? Butter, salt, fats. Like that's how you make food taste good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we know, right? But like, that's the thing is like, you don't know when you're 13 years old and you're like, oh, my dad made fettuccine Alfredo, not realizing that you're eating 1,500 calories in one sitting, which is your entire day's eating essentially at that age, right?
Especially if you're not moving.
So well, exactly right. That was the worst part because, like, you know, the frustrating thing about it too is like there was a convalescence of bullshit that kind of fucked me over in multiple ways. Is like I wanted to play hockey, right? I wanted to play football. I was dedicated, man. When I played soccer and I gave that shit my all. But so the way I stopped playing soccer is I remember this vividly. We were driving past the community hall. And it was the last day, like the second last day or something to sign up. And I said to my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, like I really want to play soccer with my team this year. And we were on my way home from my grandma's. In hindsight, she might have been liquored or not. I have no fucking clue because they did that all the time. And she's like, oh, I don't have money on me. We'll come back tomorrow. We didn't go back tomorrow. Right? We didn't go back ever. I never got to play. And then both of my brothers decided, hey, I want to go play football. So they went to join a club on the north side of Edmonton that's near us. Cost my parents $900 each for the equipment rentals and fees at the beginning of the season. And then because it was too much work for my brothers in the hot August sun, doing the practices and scrimmages and all that before the season started, they both quit. And my parents didn't get their money back. And then, you know, 2 years later, when I'm old enough, I'm like, hey, Mom, I want to go play football or I want to get skating lessons and go play some hacky, right? Well, I got basically told, hey, get fucked. We don't have the money. Your brothers fucked this over for you. And it's like, okay, cool, great, right? So, I mean, that's one of the downsides of being the youngest brother of four, right? It's like you kind of get all the bullshit because it's like, well, we trialed this with your brothers and it didn't work out with them, so we're not even going to give you the opportunity. Hey, get fucked, right? So basically, growing up, like I was kind of, you know, forced to finish my meals. The meals that I was forced to finish were very heavy oftentimes, right? I'm talking like the pierogies, for example. It wouldn't just be pierogies. It'd be pierogies with sour cream, bacon bits on top, cooked or coated in butter and onion, and then having fried kubasa on the side. So delicious, right? I know it's like, it's like I'm getting hungry saying it, right? But it's like, you know, like, that because of how it's hyper palatable, right? Because it's salty, it's fatty, all that. When you're a kid, you just want to keep eating more and more and more. And then, you know, there's no like stopgap. There's no, and I'll do the most fucked up thing in the world is now today, my mom, she'll be like, it wasn't my fault. I didn't make you guys eat all that food. It's like, oh, all right. Okay. You know, bite your tongue. But that led me to 330 pounds by the time I was 16. And I remember Taryn and I, my brother, in 2011, we went to Mexico This was halfway through grade 11, and I was doing modules at the time. I was like sick of all the bullshit at high school because all my friends were dramatic fucks, and I was kind of just over it. And I was like, I don't want to be around you motherfuckers. You guys are annoying. So I went for a semester to go do modules, right? Distance learning. And we went to Mexico, and we came back, and when him and I were leaving Mexico, we said to each other, like, hey man, like, let's lose some fucking weight. Cause like we're going to the pool and stuff in Mexico, just looking like complete, like, you know, just like people, like you got people coming to try to roll us back into the ocean because they think we're beached whales. Right.
And you're you know what, 17, 18 here?
I was 16.
Okay.
I was 16. I just turned, no, actually I was 15. Yeah, I was 15 here. And this was like right before I started going to the gym. And actually what started it, believe it or not, what started it is Taryn and I, that's my brother. He's a year and 7 months apart from me. So he's the closest to me out of my brothers. We just decided when we got back, we're like, hey man, let's cut out soda, right? Let's not drink any pop. Let's see how long we can go without drinking pop, right? And I didn't drink pop for like a year and a half. Like I'd go to parties and stuff in high school and I'd drink I might just drink vodka straight or Fireball, or I'd have beer, but no vodka, no pop, right? I stuck to my guns on that. And then I was on and off with the gym, but then I hit this stride when I was in grade 12. I got into a rollover in grade 12. No, I was on Halloween of grade 12. So 2012. And when that occurred, I was kind of like, actually, when I went to Mexico was when the second half of grade 10, not grade 11. But yeah, in grade 12, I got into a rollover, and that kind of woke me up, right? It was like, oh fuck, like you're gonna die one day. And I sat in my room all day. This is kind of a tangent, but I pretty much sat in my room for all of November, all of December, all of January, skipping school, smoking weed, crying myself to sleep because of the fucking, you know, the post-traumatic stress of that event. And one day I was at this is crazy. This is serendipitous, dude. I was at my friend's house, and I smoked a ton of weed, drank a bunch of liquor, and then do you remember Spice, like K2, synthetic weed, stuff like that?
No.
Do you ever fuck with that? Okay, so one of my friends brought it. It's actually really fucked up stuff. Like people have had like complete mental breakdowns and just never came back from this shit. And I added a little bit of that on top when I packed the bowl. I remember sitting there the entire night, like, you know, everything's going on around you, and I was just sitting on the couch in my friend's house, and I just felt so out of it. And at one point, I got up and I just walked outside. And mind you, this was January 29th in the middle of Canada, right? In winter.
The north of Canada.
Yeah. And I walked outside. I sat on this hot tub outside of my friend's patio by myself, and I was there for like 10 minutes in minus 30-degree weather. Didn't feel a fucking thing. And I remember I had this moment where, oh man, it's so weird saying this because it's like it takes you back immediately. I heard a voice in my head that wasn't my own. And I saw myself from above my body, and the voice was like, it was kind of like, what are you doing with your fucking life? It's like, what are you doing? Like, it was kind of like, clock is ticking, motherfucker. Right. And that after that day, literally the next morning, I quit smoking weed. I quit drinking for a year, no parties, nothing like that, no weed. I started going to every single one of my classes, and I started going to the gym every single day. I remember it, like I'd get off class, I'd get off school, and boom, right there, I'd have every single day, I'd bring a protein shaker with creatine, pre-workout, and whey. Disgusting concoction. But I'd fill it up with water, the water at the water fountain. I'd shake the shit out of it. I'd go and get on the bus. I'd be listening to my music, go right to the gym, lift for an hour and a half, do some cardio. And I just remember this fire burning inside of me. And I was at that point probably 300 pounds. And a year to the date from that decision, I was right before I actually started dating my ex. I had gotten down to 188 pounds.
Sheesh! Holy fuck, man!
Yeah,
that's a crazy story.
I was like, yeah, and then and that I guess brings us to today. Because since then, it was kind of an up and down and up and down, but I never really went above 230. Right? Like if I go up to 230, it was because I was gaining, and then I would float back down to 215, 220. Yeah. Right? But now, start of a new relationship back in March or April of 2019. 2020, sorry, start of a fucking pandemic, right? All the gyms closed down, shit like that, and it kind of just spiraled out of control.
For sure, man. I'm in the worst shape of my fucking life, man. That's why I keep like I'm just so mad that they just like kept closing the gyms and stuff like that. But like, man, health and wellness are such a like interesting and deep topic because, you know, people will say, and this is something that I love because I've been hearing it a lot lately, is, oh, well, the reason people are obese is because they have poor mental health issues, they have depression, anxiety, addictions, and stuff like that, and that's their coping mechanism. But when you learn about nutrition and health, you realize the things that give you anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, often are the food you're eating. So like it's this terrible mix of, poor education and also like poor monitoring from our governments, specifically the Americans. And like that is creating a vicious cycle where, these mental health issues are literally being caused by the same thing they're eating. Think of the imbalances your body has when you're drinking 2 liters of Coca-Cola a day and a pack of Lay's chips. Think of the imbalances you're having, right? Like it's honestly insane because, and we know now specifically like gut health is responsible, like directly is responsible for your mood and anxiety and depression, which is crazy to think.
Oh, it's
but then, sorry,
yeah, it's actually funny.
Before I forget this, The last thing, while I was researching this, so this last week, I was having a bunch of gut issues, and I was just feeling super lethargic all the time, and I knew I was being lazy about my eating. So I'm kind of the opposite of you. Like if I don't think about food, I could literally wake up, have a cup of coffee, and I won't eat till 6:30 p.m. Like literally that happened. So that's why I was like, okay, I got to get regimented about this because this isn't sustainable. I'm eating low quality and sporadically, and that's making me more tired, preventing me to eat healthy, right? So now I'm trying to find out what works for my body, trying to do a real reset, starting with the bare minimums, low FODMAP, vegetables, and high density meats and rice. That's really it. And as many fruits as I want, which is awesome because fruits are like candy. But I'm reading about pork because I was interested in pork's quality as a meat. In Canada, pork has to be like grain fed. Like it's like literally, like I looked it up quickly and it was like, you feed pork grain. Like that's what you feed them or whatever it might be. In America, it's literally legal for what's called garbage feeding. And they're quite literally taking waste with plastic in it and stuff like that and feeding garbage to pigs and then feeding that to people. So it's like, I'm sorry, the fact that you messed that up as a regulation in your country is a failure. Like that is definitely something that should be addressed, right? You need to be feeding people high quality food because that's literally the future. But then you walk down like the candy aisle and shit like that. It's crazy, man. Like how are you going to beat that? How is a 12-year-old supposed to beat that? You're setting such a terrible, terrible environment, and the more. And your environment is what's going to make you be successful or not, right? If you buy crappy food and it's in your house, when you're tired after a long day from work, you're going to eat the crappy food. But if it's just not in your house, it's not even there. All you have is like whole eggs and salmon, right? Like Atlantic solid caught salmon, not like farm made, which is still not terrible, but you have that. Well, you're going to just make it because otherwise you're going to go hungry, right? And you're going to summon that energy because you have to. You've established an environment where that's the only food there is. Okay, I don't have a bag of chips. I just have 900 baby carrots. What am I going to eat, right? Like honestly. And so like this last week, I just did a total reset, trying to fix my gut, and I bought just a ton of baby spinach. Like I said, a bunch of fruits, complex fruits, got my multivitamin, some ground meats, pork tenderloin, Canadian pork tenderloin, a ton of eggs, 100% juices. So like 100% cranberry juice, 100% orange juice. Like not like I saw one cranberry juice where it was just the first ingredient, cold pressed cranberries. Other cranberry juice, first ingredient, sugar water. Literally. That was literally the first ingredient. So it's like, I just did a total reset. Man, I've already felt so much better. And I'll just be honest, I was having like crazy gas, like ridiculous gas. And now it's like completely
before limited. Or after?
What's that?
Before or after you change your diet?
Before I change my diet.
Because normally, like oftentimes, like changing your diet dramatically can cause that because your body needs to readjust, right?
No, but it was like, before.
In my experience, like,
and I'm just saying, like bloating, like all this stuff, you really have to address the root cause of how you're feeling, and it's not the gym, it's the food and fuel you're putting in your body. And if you're putting in junk, you're not going to get the motivation or the energy to take the next step. And it's so difficult to communicate to people that, you know, sugar's as addictive as cocaine. Like it's gonna win. It's gonna win. You can't think that you're gonna be, you know, have better control over yourself than something as addictive as cocaine. You know, like, so it takes like serious steps to be able to, and I'm not saying completely cut out sugar. I'm just saying like limit, or, well, I mean, you really should cut out refined sugar, but whatever. Like if you limit these things to the best of your ability, you can make huge steps forward, man.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to try to, I have a lot that popped in my mind because I've been thinking about this whole thing a lot, right? I'm actually taking a nutrition class right now. And funny enough, I just wrote an exam yesterday that talked about some of this stuff. It's crazy how coincidence works.
Yeah.
Eh? Like just the other day, Emma and I were talking, yesterday we were talking about gut microbiome, and then all of a sudden today we bring it up here. But no, like you were saying, like, like it's an evolving field, right? It's really new. Like probably the last 4 or 5 years that people have really been beginning to study the gut microbiome. Like, think of it like this, right? Like for the listeners, like if you, like imagine you have like 10, it's obviously way more, but for simplicity's sake, imagine you have 10 different bacteria, right? And each bacteria has a job to digest a certain food or food group. And you only feed it one of the food groups, right? The proportion, so say you only feed it trans fats, carbohydrates, and sugar. Sugar is a carbohydrate, but anyway, but you don't feed it enough protein, right? You don't feed it enough vitamins, etc. The good bacteria in your gut, and this is a vast oversimplification, so don't take this as like law, but essentially what you'll get is the bacteria that, like, you'll get a disproportionate amount of the bacteria that's not really supplying you with anything good, because you're not feeding the bacteria that, you know, digest protein and digest fiber, etc. You're only feeding the stuff that digests sugar, right? On top of that, usually if you have a diet that is high in fat, high in carbohydrates, low in protein, that kind of spells out to have a diet that's poor in macro and micronutrients, right? Well, three of the most important substances for your body. Number one, vitamin D, right? Vitamin D has shown to directly reduce anxiety and depression, right?
And increase testosterone by 40%.
Yep. And that's why seasonal affective disorder is such a thing in northern climates. Like I have it here in Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta, we have the peak of winter right before and right after the solstice for about 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks before December 22nd and the 2 weeks after, we probably have like what you probably remember like 9 hours, 8 hours of sunlight a day.
Dude, it's a joke.
Like actual sunlight.
If that.
Like it's like, yeah, it's like 9 a.m. to 3:30 or 4 p.m. and then it's dark, right? So in those instances, you're not getting enough vitamin D, and it's no surprise that people get so depressed. And then another one is EPA and DHA, which is in fish oil, right? EPA specifically has been shown to reduce anxiety, right? If you guys actually are interested in a podcast that covers a lot of this stuff, Huberman Lab, solid podcast. He covers tons of this stuff in a really, really accessible way. A lot of science that's very accessible. Lastly, and meatheads out there are going to pump their fists, creatine. Creatine has been linked to better body function and better brain function, right? And creatine you get from eating a lot of fish and a lot of meats or supplementation.
Red meats.
It's like right off the bat there. Yeah, well, it's fish as well. Fish does have creatine.
No, fish is a big source, but I mean, a lot of people barely even consider fish meat, really. But I meant turkey and chicken are gonna not have nearly as much creatine as steak, venison, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So so right off the bat, those are three dietary changes, three elements of diet that could be huge to your detriment if you're not taking care of those bases. And you said something that I really wanted to touch on. You're talking about food, right? You're talking about obesity. Like I think it's something like two-thirds or three-quarters of the Western population, specifically Canada, United States, is obese. Right now, myself, I'd be considered obese, right? Obviously, by my own doing. I'm not saying that anybody put the food in my stomach, right? But this is what I was going to say. On top of that obese thing, before I get to obesity, one of the reasons why sugar, because you mentioned sugar is almost as addictive as cocaine, right? So sugar kind of gives you that feel good rush, right? Like there's people who, an example of this is people who are more depressed or people who have ADHD. ADHD is like an imbalance in dopamine in your brain, right? You don't have proper levels of dopamine, which causes your brain to jump and skip. It's almost like a record, right? And people who have ADHD, like my girlfriend, end up consuming much more sugar than the average person because they're looking to have that that neurochemical rebalancing through their diet, right? It's that craving. It's a similar thing that occurs with people who quit alcohol, right? Like, if you're used to being an alcoholic and you quit alcohol, like you'll eat tons and tons of chocolate and sugar and candy because you want that. It's like that way for your brain to kind of stay balanced, right? Same with depressed people. All of that is true, but I think something that also occurs in our society that contributes to that in a way that might not be intuitive is the hyper accessibility we have to content, right? You can pull up your phone and you scroll through TikTok, right? 15-second clips. Scroll through Instagram. It's a never-ending scroll. That's by design, right? You go on Reddit, never-ending scroll. That's by design. All of these things are implemented, and all these things are implemented to keep your attention, right? And the way they keep your attention is they keep giving you novelty, right? And novelty causes the release of dopamine. So you'd think if you're cycling through Instagram for an hour, right, or Reels or TikTok for an hour and a half, and then in that time you get hungry, and during that time your body has just been squirting out dopamine into your brain, right, causing this reaction of dopamine. Well, what's going to happen when you go to look for food, right? You're going to get that anticipatory response that dopamine provides, and you're going to look for that hyperpalatable food. Right. So like you see those, like the guy who gets up to go for a jog at 5 a.m. and then meditates for a half hour and then gets to work and doesn't pick up his phone or look at Instagram until, his lunch break at 1 p.m. That dude's probably not springing for a McGriddle in the morning. You know what I mean?
Because
that dude's probably
he would probably hate it at that point. Once you get there, that's you literally like I remember when I was 20, before my surgery and everything and my injuries, I was eating super, super, super clean. I remember having nothing when the cake would come out. Nothing. I'd be like, I'm good. I don't really want it. And people would be like, oh my God, just eat the cake. And I would go, I literally don't want it. Like it's not going to taste good to me. It's going to taste bad.
Yeah.
And this last week that I've been doing a reset, and I intend to continue to eat like this, I've been having crazy cravings, bro. Like so bad. And never before in my life have I had cravings. Like I can feel it right now. Like my tongue is like thinking about sugar right now. Or I don't even know if it's sugar. Like I don't even know what it is. But like there's that intense taste. But I also know that all that's in my fridge right now is ground meat and rice and avocado and spinach and carrots. I'm going to go eat carrots and hummus right now after this is done.
Hummus is God tier. Hummus is God tier.
It's just chickpeas. Like literally stuff like this is so simple to implement, so difficult to execute, but has insane rewards. So for the product I'm developing, first off, it's like a big proponent of it is going to be, for me at least, is the fact that so many gym bros and people are supplementing in ways that you just talked about: whey protein, creatine, other stuff. Whey's great, but I can't drink whey. This makes me super, super bloated, just really negative reaction from my body. And a lot of people have the same issues. But what people don't realize is if you
try lactase.
Yeah.
That's because you don't have the enzyme, right? But you could get lactase, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but what I'm saying is like what people don't realize is if they're not reinforcing their gut with the proper microbiome and the proper, vitamins and nutrients, it's not going to be there and ready to receive the rest of the nutrients you're trying to feed it. So you're literally not optimizing the way your body's working if you're not providing it the proper things. And then what we were talking about a second ago, dude, it's so funny that we're talking about this shit because this is literally like what I've been designing out. So I made a 30 minute for 30-day challenge in the morning for people's mornings. And what you just said about like meditating and not using your phone is all in there. So for 30 minutes, you don't use your phone. You remove processed sweets from your breakfast. So only whole foods in the morning, 10 minutes of movement, 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, journaling, gratitude goals,
add cold showers into
affirmations, and then delay caffeine until after the first 30 minutes, no phone, like waking up at the same time every day, stuff like this. It's all here. And what's great about, and the reason I thought about this was because I know for me, man, if you do something for 30 days, that's past the 21-day threshold of habit creating, right? If you do something for 30 days and you feel better, you're most likely going to continue doing that thing because now that discipline is creating that positive feedback loop that the, candy was giving you a second ago, right? So you can actually like break out of the mold and break into the next level simply by just doing the same thing over and over again, even if you don't enjoy doing it. Like I don't like eating like this. Obviously, I would much prefer to eat the other way, but I've already had way more energy throughout the days, and I have way less gas. You know, I'm more comfortable. That's another big thing, and it's making me more productive and increasing my confidence. So it's like you can do all these things where before, if you're dealing with unhealthy food habits, you're not going to be able to go and do these other things. And I feel like that's, you know, we're talking about the body positivity movement specifically around obesity. I feel like the big thing that they're missing is people will say, oh, like, well, maybe they're unhealthy mentally, or maybe they're in bad environments or whatever it is, so you can't blame them for eating poorly. And it's like, but actually maybe they're in bad environments, maybe they're having depression all because they're eating poorly. So you're kind of forgetting the root cause that's happening here, and one of the number one things. And I think a lot of people are just not having to take responsibility for the fact that they've allowed everyone around them to become obese too, by funneling, channeling, and intentionally providing these things to these people, to people that are potentially vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like, I agree 100%. Like, I think it's multivariate, right? Because it's like, are you like, maybe you eat like shit, and so because you eat like shit, you don't have energy to exercise, and because you don't have energy to exercise, you sleep like shit, and because you sleep like shit, you have higher levels of cortisol, which then causes you to eat like shit, right? And then it just continues on, right? And then you don't have the energy or the willpower to do things like meditation, right? Like, and meditation and cold showers, things like that, they're not like super fixes. What they are is they're like an impulsivity check, right? Because here's stimulus and then here's response, and what those things do is they widen that gap, right? So that's when, like, you having that, seeing that cake, right? That's a stimulus. You might have had a thought, or, you know, right now you're having a thought of like, I really want to go, you know, slam some cheeseburgers, right? But then that's stimulus. But then you're widening that gap through mental effort, right? You're essentially developing willpower, and it's getting easier to develop that willpower, which then gives you all of this birth before that response. So then in this time, right, like from here to here, it's like reach for the chocolate, eat the chocolate, right? But then it's like reach for the chocolate, remember you're on a diet. Reach for the chocolate, and then, you know, like reach for the chocolate, and it's like, I don't need it, right? But eventually where you want to be when it comes to, you know, starting to develop those healthy habits to lose weight, where you want to be realistically, in my opinion, is reach for the chocolate, or look at how many calories you've had today, right? Can you fit it into your macros? When was the last time you had chocolate? Or have you hit your protein goal? Have a piece of chocolate, right? Like, I think that's where you should end up, right? Is like, you should, like, it's easy initially, right? It's easy initially to just be like, no McDonald's, none of this. I'm doing, like, I'm not mocking you, right? No, but because I've been there 100 times, right? Like, it's easy
there's ways to break a bad cycle that often require that first hard week. I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I agree with you, right? Like, I do the same thing. Like, if I'm gonna start a cut tomorrow, what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna slash my calories for the first 2 weeks, because what that does for me is that gives me that initial boost. It's like, oh damn, I just burned 6 pounds not burned, but I lost 6 pounds in 2 weeks due to my caloric balance, and I feel good, right? Now let's carry this momentum forward, and then I adjust, right? Not everybody can do that, because, and this is what I was getting to, is some people lack the nuance to realize that that's a strategy, right? That's a tactic. That's not, it's a tactic within the greater strategy. It's not the strategy, right? Like, where you want to be is you want to get to the point where, you know, 80-20 rule, right? 85-15, where, you know, 85% of your food, whole foods, meals, etc. But, you know, if you want to have one night a week where you grab a donair and a poutine, fuck it, man. As long as during that day, you know, for breakfast, maybe you just had a protein shake, and then for lunch, you just had a bowl of tuna. So you've only had 400 calories and 90 grams of protein. You can afford a 2,000 calorie meal, especially if you're active, right? That's the thing. But people don't view it like that. As people get binary and they think bad food, good food, bad food, good food, bad behavior, good behavior, bad behavior, good behavior. But it's not a binary, right? It's not black and white. In fact, it's a gradient, right? So what you want to do is, if it's helpful for you to start, everything's black and white, good, right? But the way you're going to win, the way you're going to be sustainable long term, because like nobody on this fucking planet, except for maybe Jocko Willink or other Navy SEAL type motherfuckers, can last their entire life on sheer willpower. Yeah, like that's just like man.
I mean, I hear right? that. I hear guys like Jocko talk about stuff like that, and I'll be honest, I'm like, as much as I love him, That's not going to work for 90% of the population. It isn't going to work.
Well, I mean, even Jocko, like as a joke, like I'm sure if you listen to the podcast, like he'll talking to Echo, and he was like, yeah, I was at a party last night for my kids, and the cupcakes won, so I had to go home and do 100 pull-ups, right? So it's like even his mind, he still has those lapses, right? But he understands like there's a balance, right? It's like you overconsume, then you compensate, right? And you don't always have to do that.
He had one on a 7-layer chocolate cake that he went into. Cracked me up.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's like, but he makes a joke out of it, but what he's really talking about is balance, right? Like it's okay to have cake once in a while, as long as it's once in a while. Like you don't want it to be a situation where cake is the norm and chicken breast is once in a while. You want that to be inverse, right? And that was what the focus of this podcast was initially, was body positivity and obesity, but we kind of got sidetracked with tangents and talking about stories. But we're here now, and like, I guess what we're getting at is, there's in society writ large right now in the zeitgeist, there seems to be this I don't want to say it's a movement, because the movement is a collective, but there seems to be this sentiment that if you're obese, if you're fat as fuck, like that, number one, it's not your fault, it's society's fault. And number two, obesity isn't a health problem. Spoiler alert, obesity is the number one comorbidity for almost every single health and deteriorating disease out there. Number two, that it's beautiful to be obese or something like that. Like, hey man, cool. If you're a dude that's into chubby girls, or you're a girl that's into chubby guys, like rock on. But just be like, I personally don't find somebody who weighs more than me or who doesn't fit into their clothes, or I don't find that attractive. Right. And there's a reason for that, right? There's literally a reason for that. Like there's a degree of like, like biologically speaking, bro, I'm going to sound like those guys from that Fit and Fresh is biology.
I don't agree with where you're about to go, but I see what you're saying.
Where am I going?
Well, you're going to say that there's biological attraction based on someone's inherent health, right?
To a degree. Like, that's why, like, men who look at women...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I am going to disagree with you there. I think there's a lot more, like, social implementation into, like, attraction because of just... Like, I think that's definitely, like, I've heard that one before, and every time I'm kind of like, okay, like, that feels a bit bro science-y, but regardless, like, I think you touched on a couple of good points where, you're mentioning that the beauty, but I think specifically, like, the health one, because for me, man, I've heard, people just deny the health aspect of it, and that one always drives me up the wall, because it's like, well, now you're lying, and now you're misinforming people with very, very basic information just to protect people's feelings. So you're really not protecting people's feelings. What you're doing is you're allowing the death, literally, of thousands and thousands of people to quote unquote protect their feelings, or encourage their bad habits, or whatever you may call it, instead of trying to actively find a solution for the issue. And the solution isn't like be mean to people, but the solution certainly isn't reinforce lies instead of make an active pursuit to, create healthy programs and make sure that people can get healthy and then not die, because there's no empathy in letting people die through misinformation, or like you can literally be too empathetic to the point where you're an enabler, which is, if you watch any of these obesity shows and stuff like that, where it's like My 600-Pound Life, they'll literally have someone essentially force feeding them, like bringing them these meals. And it's like, it should be impossible for you to be immobile, but you're someone's like, are you going to tell me that person's being empathetic to them? Like, is that the case? Because when they say they're sad, the person brings them the food. I guarantee that they think they're being empathetic. They're really literally poisoning someone to death. So like, there's no empathy in that. So it's definitely a difficult quote unquote issue to tackle, because,
that's like,
I think what I'm trying to say is you have to accept that it's an issue first before you can even try to diagnose anything else. Like, that's literally the first step is acceptance.
And that's like the fucky thing with our culture, right? Is that every single thing that is like like, again, man, like somebody shooting up heroin, they deserve empathy for what got them there. But them shooting up heroin, there's obviously also some pathologies there, right? It's okay to admit that, right? You know, you could be empathetic towards somebody who had a rough childhood and didn't have any nutritional information and they got super big and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's still a pathology, a physical pathology that they're morbidly obese, right? Like there's this obsession within our culture to essentially validate everybody. That's that word, right? Validate everybody. It's keep everybody in their, you know, make sure everybody feels safe, make sure everybody feels comfortable, things like that. You don't ever want to feel uncomfortable. And how uncomfortable would it be to be told that you're obese and you're unhealthy and you're going to die early and this and that? No, nobody wants to acknowledge that that's a real thing. But it's like, you're not being an asshole to tell somebody that you, I mean, it's different. If you go up to a person on the street and you're like, what's up, fatso? Yeah, you're an asshole, right? Yeah. It's like but like if like, you know, if my girlfriend comes to me and I gain another 40 pounds and she's like, babe, I'm really concerned about your health. You've let yourself go. You're not eating well. I'm not going to be like, all bodies are beautiful. Fuck off. Right. I know, like I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Maybe you're right here because I don't fit into any of my old clothes. I don't fit into any clothes. You know, I can barely breathe walking up the stairs. Like there needs to be a line drawn somewhere between, you know, full blown out acceptance and I guess what it is this disconnect from reality, right? It's like we want to pretend that this is how reality is versus what society tells us reality is. And it's like you're just playing a game of words, right? You're not actually acknowledging things for what they appear to be in front of you. You're trying to put a spin on it so they appear the way you want it to appear. And like, how dangerous is that, man? Like, imagine like I hit somebody with my fucking car because I'm drunk driving and I'm like, well, they just jumped out into the middle of the street. Same kind of shit, right? It's like you're trying to lie and manipulate reality to fit your agenda, ignoring the truth of the matter, and you're harming yourself and you're harming other people in those circumstances, right?
Exactly. Where, you know, that is literally where I draw the line of I'll allow someone to say like, oh, well, I'm not trying to be mean, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you have no business going up to an overweight person that you don't know or barely know and giving them any sort of medical advice or anything like that. That's none of your business, you know? You 100% have a responsibility to go up to people you care about and be honest with them and try to help them. Like that's a positive thing because otherwise you're just going to just lie, you know? And as long as you're not an asshole and you're coming from it from a positive place and you actually apply very simple implementable things into their life instead of, you know, like we were saying earlier about like, hey, it would just completely change your entire life. Like I can do that because when I say, oh man, I'm kind of out there right now. I mean like I'm eating organic vegetable chips too much, you know, like, it's different. Because, so for me, that's a small step back. If someone is deep into food addiction, like you really have to deal with this. And then food addiction is a completely different one. That's a totally different topic. But I'm just talking about people that are generally unhealthy. Like,
well, imagine convincing people who are suicidal that it's okay to be suicidal and you're validated to be suicidal. Hey man, life's hard. It's okay to want to kill yourself. If you want to kill yourself, go right there, kill yourself. I'll defend you, right? It's like, no, that person is fucking damaged from it doesn't matter how they got damaged. We're not judging them. We're not saying that, well, you're fucked because you're damaged, but it's acknowledging that you're damaged, right? And like you can't, and this is the thing. This is the fucked up thing, right? It's like somewhere deep within that acknowledgement, and not for everybody, but I know speaking for you and I, somewhere deep within that acknowledgement to somebody being completely so unhealthy or obese or out of shape is the desire to want to help them, right? It's the desire to want to see them get better. Because why else would you give a fuck, right? Again, that's the thing. Is like
that's what I mean. If you care about your friends, you're willing to have hard conversations with them about anything. And this is just one of those things. That's empathy. Like telling your friend what they need to hear is empathy. Telling them what they want to hear is not. Because who else is gonna tell them? If their close friend is not gonna tell them, who's gonna tell them? No one.
Well, straight up, right? And like that's kind of like the situation too, where it's like it's a phrase of I mean, you see all this shit with Joe Rogan going down in the media and all this, and it kind of reminded me of this. It's like, check your friends in private and defend them in public, right? Like if somebody came up to me on the street and they said to me like, Ashton, you're fat as fuck, bro, and you were there with me, you'd be like, hey man, none of your fucking business that my boy's got some movies going on, all right? Like piss off. But then if we were in private, you'd be like, hey bro, I noticed like you haven't been going to the gym. Like, is everything okay? I noticed you haven't been eating too well, right? Like you'd have my back and you'd say like, yeah, fuck you, man. That's not your place to say. But you'd come to me afterwards and you'd be like, hey man, like this is actually a real issue, right? So maybe, can we talk about this? I'm concerned about you. It's not you being an asshole, right? It's love, right? That's straight up, it's love. But it's like people, like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, see how far that friendship's going to go with the people who try to console you and tell you all the things wrong with you are actually right when you disagree with them, right? See how far that goes when you say, hey, man, I think that, being this aggressive towards people who have a different opinion than you are, it might be a little unhealthy. And all of a sudden you're the public enemy number one because dissent is not allowed, right? That's just the way that shit goes.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we have more of this to cover, but I think we might want to, we'll definitely touch on this topic again. I don't know if it'll be next episode or sometime soon, but I mean, we got lots to talk about because I mean, I'm going to dietetics and you're getting after it with your nutrition. So
yeah, with that, when the Power Greens podcast when the Power Greens product comes out, I'm sure we can make a whole podcast around it.
Oh yeah, we'll do a little bit of research, get some papers, get some citations, talk about it. Fuck yeah,
got to build that product out too. So, all right.
Well,
thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll definitely be talking a lot about.
I need to say it. I need to close us. You motherfucker. I'm like, all right, have a nice night. And you're like, thanks for listening, everybody. Whatever, bro. Yeah, thanks for checking in, everybody. Riley, take it away. Close us out.
Man, you know what's funny? I didn't even hear you say it. Because I couldn't give a shit. Oh man! All right, everybody. Sorry. As I was saying before, Ashton interrupted me. Interrupting him. We'll be covering a lot of like dietetics, nutrition, how to improve yourself, and then also just randomly, not advice,
not official advice,
but also like what we're doing, what our failures are right now, currently, and in the future, things we're trying to implement to make them better, and see if that can help you out. Because that's always super fun, right? And that's kind of what podcasts are for. And we're also just going to cover some fun topics, like some fun Reddit stuff and everything in between. Thanks so much, guys. Take it easy. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new. And hit that like button if you enjoyed the show. Take it easy, guys. Bye.